In this tutorial video, I want to discuss XdTd settings and some other useful features. Let's start with the settings. The settings are references that XdTd uses to control the way it appears, the way options have defaults, and some other things. Settings are saved on a user basis. So every time you change some settings, when you load XdTd again, they will be all there for you. You can at any time reset settings to their default values. So let's have a look at the settings. They are accessed through the application menu here. We see that I can access the settings, and here is where I reset settings. Okay. So let's have a look at what is in settings. We can see that we have a dialog with a few tags. The one analysis controls parameters used during the analysis run. It does actually just controls what are the default parameters that are presented when you decide to really run an analysis. The choice you made when you click run in the dialog that turns up is the one that will prevail. This here just presents the times which defaults will be presented in that dialog, okay? Then you have the discretization features, which I hope you never have to use. And again, these just define defaults for the settings that gonna be used there. Then you have several options that control the style of the application. For example, what is the size of the font, the size of the toolbars. Lots of settings that control style of the charts, right? Some settings that control the application theme. For example, if I change here to a dark theme, it will immediately change everything to a dark theme, okay? And you see that here you have three options basically: the default light theme, the default dark theme, and the system theme. The system theme picks up whatever the operating system is using and sets XdTd to look integrated to that, okay? And there is a final option here that regards charts. That probably should be in the other box, but never mind. This is just because if you choose a dark theme or a light theme, the chart will have different colors, the background of the charts. Some may prefer to always have a white background so that they can export to a report or something with no problem. And then you can set it here, right? You just define the background color. You override the default and define whatever color you want. Then we have an option where I can define file paths. So if I have, for example, created my own database, or my institution has created a database, I can just set here the path so that every time I use XdTd, it will open that database that has been defined for the institution. The other one is regarding the case studies location. By default, XdTd after installation will create an XdTd directory in the user's subdir, and we'll have an example subdir there where it will by default look for XdTd files to open and save. But if you create your own structure, which I recommend, so that there is no risk that in a reinstallation their files can be deleted, you can show it here so that every time you open XdTd, it will already point to your user-defined dir. And there are some other options here, just regarding the amount of logging that is done. Normally, only errors are logged to the login file, but if you need more detail, you can change here so you can have more full log files that will have more information if we have to analyze a bug or something. And it's just, you will notice that many things in XdTd you do by selecting components, and that is done by checking the distance between the click and the component, right? That involves floating point imprecisions and has some tolerance to it. Depending on the maximum size of the model, these tolerances are calibrated. I hope you never have to deal with this. I never had. But if you have, here's a good place to try to get a correction. So this is all about settings. I already showed you that you can reset settings here. Let me now just explain some useful tools that you have. I told you that you can create your own database using XdTd. And to do that, the thing you have to do is to create the database as CSV files, right? And then you can import them and translate them into a proper database using these database tools that we have here. Here we have an option, for example, if you have one database by project. So you can come here and switch the database depending on what you're working on at any time and come back to the default database. And then you can create a CSV template, just a CSV with a header so that you can fill your own data, which later you can create here a database from the CSV, okay? And if you can get any database and export back to a CSV if you like. So this is a set of useful tools to manage databases. Then you have this tool which I find quite handy, which is just a chart digitizer. Why is that used for? Imagine you want to compare results you got in XdTd with something else which you just have on paper, a chart. You can use this chart digitizer to read the chart and translate it into a CSV file that you can later import to compare with XdTd results. That's handy. Here you can access the log file. So this is just shows an empty log file because we did not run anything. But if you run into trouble, you can just look at the log. I hope you never had to do that. And here you can visit the system as well. So these are the main functions here in applications. To demonstrate other things, I will open a few databases here. So I just come open panel. I have to find where I put this. Just a second. I want to use a file which I created for this tutorial video. So this. So I will open this tool. And this is something nice as well. You can open as many case studies you want at the same time. Just select all of them and click open. You see that it is opened all of them here. So I just wanted to use this to present how you can play with results and compare them and try to find differences between them using XdTd. These two case studies, they have a few results into them. So if I want to see what are there, I just click here in the results tab. And you can see that XdTd always tries to look at the complete description of a result set and try to find a difference. So it creates labels that are smart. For example, in this case, I have 5 result sets, and the only difference is that I changed the path thickness in the analysis. So you see that it shows me that the results have that main difference, okay? So this is true for one of the case study, and if I look at the other for the same information, you see that I changed in this case the attachment thickness, right? TA means the attachment thickness here. So this is good. You see that it's handy to have labels structured like that when you do comparisons. XdTd do a bit more. If this is a bit confusing, you can just compare result sets, and you see that it creates a report showing exactly what the difference is. So in this case, as I told you, is the bond thickness which is different. So this helps. Sometimes, okay? I forgot to show, but whenever you have a case study open here, you have here in case study information, reports that you can generate with everything in the case study. This can be handy because it can be saved as a PDF, and it basically tells you everything you have in your properties, like material properties, the geometries, this, for example, for the patch, material properties, geometry, attachment, and also the available result sets. So this is handy if you're taking something that you forgot what you have done and you have lots of results saved. You can easily see where are you. Okay, so let's imagine now that I want to make some comparisons with these results here. So I'm taking this first case study. I'm selecting to look at, in this case studies, what you have here is a sheet with an embedded crack and a patch bonded to it, right? And we did some parametric studies here. So let's compare the results. So for example, if I double click here and I select stress intensity factors, it will show me the stress intensity factor. Actually, there are two curves here because this is a symmetrical problem. Keep this in mind because it may confuse you at one point, or you'll see more results than you think, or that you were expecting. And it will bring the stress intensity factor for result set 3, which is the active one. And I also see the active one down here, right? This is the one that is active. But I want now to compare this with the other result sets. Once I have a chart, I can use these two very handy buttons here that are made for comparisons. The first one compares results side by side. So it will present the chart, the same chart for each result set side by side. And this will mix in a single chart, right? Let's have a look at those. So I'll take the first one. I could choose all, but I will choose 4 of the result sets here. And that's what it does. It presents me the curves. I can now hide the fracture toughness. And you see that I can see, and that works for whatever results you have on a chart. You always have those 2 buttons available. Okay? The other option I have here is to compare this mixing or in a overlaid mode. So I can again select all this time, and then it just puts all the charts in the same, all the curves in the same chart, so I can see them. It's probably more useful in this case to compare it this way, okay? The side-by-side can be useful when you're comparing, for example, field contours, which you cannot compare in the single chart, right? So another useful feature the XdTd has is once I have 2 charts, 2 curves in the same chart, I can compare them either by the absolute value difference, which is the delta here, or by a percentage difference, which is the percentage. They behave the same way, just what is the number presented in Y is different. So let's see only doing percentage comparison, and it presents me with all the choices I have. And you see that we had 5 curves, but we see 10 choices because those values 1 and 2, because it's tip 1 and tip 2, okay? So what I will do here, I want to select the thickness 1.4, 2.8, and 0.9, and I want to see them as a percentage difference to thickness 2.0, which I select here as the reference. If I click OK, then we can see that we have the 3 curves here that show the difference between each of them to the one I've chosen as reference. Okay, if I want to see which is which, I can select to see the legend here. And you see that the blue curve is the difference between the patch 1.4 millimeters against the patch with thickness 2 millimeters, right? So this is this blue curve. And so on. You can see that this can be very handy and useful when you are making comparisons. Imagine that I just had this chart here, but I had somewhere else reference results for this. So I want to compare them. I do not have it for this case, but I could come here in the toolbar, imports, and you see that I have an import data here. So if I had those results or reference results saved in a CSV file with as many curves, I could have the 4 curves or 5 curves in the same file. I could just import them here and immediately see how my results compare with the reference results. And actually, if you look at the benchmarks page in the website, all of the comparisons that you have that were performed exactly this way. Okay, something worth telling here. I clicked, if you look at the bar here, I always have the reset to bring the chart to its original size. I always have here the change parameters. So for every chart, you have a group of chart parameters that controls its appearance and data parameters that control what is being plotted, right? So for this case, what are the choices? I can choose if I want just a crack length in the or X. This is actually useful when you have a curved crack path, because so you can just choose to see what would be in the X. If you imagine the crack path in an X plus Y chart, I could see just the X, or I could plot the crack length, which is the default, right, which is generally more useful. In this case, as we're looking at Australian intensity factors, I can choose which Australian intensity factors I want to see, right? K1, K2, quick equivalent, which combines both, or just this. And this is cumulative. I can put whatever I want here. I will not put this because K2 will be 0, so the chart will become a nest. I can select which stage I want to have a look at. In this case, as this is a chart that covers several stages, I can say I want to see up to stage 5 only, right? And then it will change up to stage the one that I've selected. This is available almost everywhere. And regarding the charts, you have an option here to scale the complete chart. Imagine you want it a bit smaller so it fits the titles better, so you can do it here. You can show or hide the bounding dots, show or hide the legend. I will hide both, right? And you see what we got. And you can show or not chart titles or axis titles just by clicking here, right? Z-axis is when you have a 3D chart. And you can control the size of the axis in that case as well, right? So I think this is most of what you can do in the settings, okay? Whenever you find a file, for example, let's imagine that I want my files without a legend and without a bounding box, like this, right? So this is what I want for MEV. So I can come here and export the config of the chart, right? So I will just choose here, chart config as a name, and I save it. So if I put this back here, and if I then import the config, it will bring everything back to what I had defined there. This is handy, you can imagine, in many situations, right, where you want your charts to look in a certain way. I forgot to mention here something important. You can control the range both in X and Y. So, for example, imagine here, let me bring back the box. Imagine I want to show here in Y only values from 100 to 400. I could just come here, select Y range, And then the format here is this. You have to open a bracket, 100, comma, 400, and close. And it will now filter the range that I wanted. You can do that for both X and Y. And again, if you save this config, it will save everything for you. The other thing we have here is the option to export the chart as a picture. You can do it in all these formats: PNG, JPEG, PDF, SVG, EPS. So whatever you see in here in the chart will get a picture exported so that you can use wherever you like. I'm showing here that you can export the configuration file, but you can also export the picture here as HTML file. You can export the data that's input as a CSV file, so you can use it in another application, or you can create a database, an SQLite database. So you have all these options to export your data. And I believe I presented this is the configuration of the chart and data that you want to import. Every time you look at a chart or a result in XdTd, you will have more or less these options available for you here. Let me see if there is. Okay. So all that I presented to you were options based on comparison of results within the same case study, right? But I can also compare results that are in different case studies, right? So for that, I just come here, compare results. I have the same side-by-side and overlaid options. So let's choose overlaid. And then I have to make a series of choices here to tell XdTd what I want to compare, right? So imagine I want to compare all these results. Okay, so I have that parametric study that was comparing the patch signals and the one that was comparing the attachment thickness, right? I will select all of them. Then I have to say, well, for which component I want to compare results. In this case, I want to compare for crack tip. What are the results available for crack tips? I will choose stroke intensity factor. Which crack tip? Remember, it's a symmetric problem. I will choose one, but it will be the same. And for which stages? And I say all. So when I do this, I immediately have here are the comparisons. Here you have mixed the curves, and you see that the colors tell me from which case study it's coming from. And then you have the markers and lines to make the proper distinction. This is very handy, again, when you're comparing different case studies, which is something that you may need if you want to compare design options that involve geometry change. If you have to make a geometry change, you have to do that in two separate case studies. And that is how you can compare the results later. Regarding case studies comparison, there is one last handy feature, is that you can compare their cost and weight, right? I'll use the side-by-side comparison here. So I can see for each of the case studies in the final configuration. So for example, we made parametric studies where we changed the thickness of the patch. That changes the cost and weight. What we are picking up here is the last one, the one that corresponds to what is set in the property. So if I come in the here in the panel, whoops. I don't know why it is not allowing me to go back there. Oh, let's go back here. So if I come here and I look at the properties, this is the thickness that is being used in the comparison. I will implement in the future the ability to choose all result sets and calculate different costs and weights based on the properties that are chosen there. But this is something that it's going to be for the future, not now. So I think with this, I have covered everything I wanted to show you about XdTd settings and features that have not actually been completely covered in the other tutorial videos. Thanks for watching.